Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let Loose with Moose. Today I have a longtime friend, Souvlaki, the head of research from Revelo Intel. Hello Souvlaki, how are you doing?
Hello, Mr. Moose. Ready to let loose. I don't know why I've wanted to say that for some time.
That's nice. Right, so could you start off a bit of an introduction with yourself, what you're doing now, and of course let us hear your crypto origin story.
All right, cool. So I head up, my quote unquote title is head of research at Revelo Intel, and I drive one core product called Snapshots, where that is just an expansion of some of the work I was doing at Beethoven, where we do performance reports for a number of different protocols over set periods of time, and that is to bridge a bit of the gap between what you see in TradFi versus like this blank space in DeFi, and trying to create that commonality for TradFi participants. I do. There's a few other things like we have we have a YouTube channel. We do a few shows. Occasionally, I am fortunate enough to make a guest appearance on the Block Blights Across the Chain on Friday, and the daily shows, which has been really cool. And other than that, within Revelo, discuss strategy, growth, trying to see what ways we can grow the business in what is it very difficult. It's always difficult to expand a business in bear markets. As for my origin story, I was actually listening to not the one you released today with UV last week. Unfortunately, my origin story isn't as cool as hearing about crypto in the taxi in Nepal. I think that was Grant from Blockmates.
That was Dan. That was Dan. Super
Dan, sorry. Mine was a bit more boring than that. I first really got exposed to Bitcoin and the technology when I was actually working in a retail bank in South Africa. We got they have like these training sessions and updates, and this update session was about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And I sat there, and it was quite some of it flew over my head because it was the first time I heard about it. And you hear concepts like decentralized ledger and how blocks get added, and you're like, what is going on here? And when I left the kind of lecture hall, general perception was that Bitcoin was a scam. And it's just like, okay, but I'd heard about it. That was my first introduction to it. And then when I was working at Morgan Stanley, Bitcoin became more and more part of the conversation as time went on. And then my official sort of entry to dip my feet into the water was, as the firm became and started discussing more about Bitcoin, obviously my interest peaked with it as well. I didn't have direct exposure to it through the work I was doing, but personally, I just didn't have time. And then, COVID hit, and I had some time that freed up, and then I jumped in. So I only entered the space when everyone went into full lockdown around COVID.
Nice, thank you so much for sharing. So like when you first attended that lecture on Bitcoin and it was a scam, what year was that? Like when that was super early, right? When Bitcoin was still known as a scam.
Let me see. Give me 1 second to have it. It was mid 2015. 2015.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So they were like, oh, this isn't. But I don't think that was just. I get the feeling most of the points that it was a scam was off the back of actually not understanding how it works and how you can have this ledger that is distributed, and how the financial systems can be built on top of this. Because at that stage, even now, if you think about building financial structures on top of even Ethereum and its many L2s, it's hard to envisage how some of the pieces fit together. So back then it was just like, wow, like there's zero infrastructure. How is this thing supposed to be like the future of finance? But it was cool to, I mean, it goes to show you that back then already, companies were already aware of it, the big companies. And I mean, that was in South Africa. So you can imagine that, you would expect in Europe and in the US and across major hubs in Asia that, they would be a lot more advanced at that point.
Yep, totally. And then you mentioned you jumped in the COVID lockdown. So like, were you straight into DeFi? What chain was that, or like what protocol was that, or like were you just buying, I don't know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano on Saxes or something?
Oh no, so I actually had a friend that helped me in, and so hooked me up. It was straight into Ethereum. Ethereum was still quite cheap then, and it was straight into DeFi. The person that introduced me was massive on pooling, Uniswap pooling, and it taught me about LP in the first thing. So in my first week of learning about crypto was actually I learned about Ethereum before I learned about Bitcoin. And I learned how liquidity pools work in basically the first week, and I had entered my first LP then. And then kind of just rode with it because I got in. I mean, I don't know if you recall. So I started in May, and then DeFi Summer basically started at the beginning of May. So I joined as DeFi Summer, and that was just an explosion. And it was kind of mind blowing how things just grew. And then I just got borderline obsessed with new things that were being released. So, it was Uniswap, and then it was 1inch, and then Balancer launched with like its 8 token pools, which was awesome. And then 1inch like try to go after Uniswap by doing a Mooniswap, and then Len became Aave, and a whole bunch of things that like Chainlink and SNX, and they were already established participants, but they were very much part of my upbringing through it, my learning curve. And then it was quite nuts how things just spiraled. And I think the two key highlights in that period was the launch of Wi-Fi by Yearn, and then the massive I guess it can be written into folklore now about how CRV was actually launched, and and the activity around that. So it was lots of fun. It was a bit it was unbelievable, to be honest. And I got taken aback by the amount of opportunities that were out there.
Yeah, so you kind of kick-started the entire DeFi summer then, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was all me. Like, it's just like finally he's arrived.
Yeah.
I got just in time, and no one expected it. And I remember I'd speak to a friend that introduced me, and they were actually a group of friends, and I was just like every day, it's just like, oh my god, is this really happening? What does this mean? And what does this mean? And I'd
Oh,
fire
wow.
like multiple questions like every day, and I just wanted to absorb as much as possible as quickly as possible. And like I remember there were stages. I know that was like peak bull market, but there were definitely days where I had to force myself to stop because I was feeling mental fatigue. I was getting headaches because I was still I was still working a full-time job at Morgan Stanley there, and so this was all in the spare time. And I was pretty much doing this when we had my wife and I, our firstborn arrived in April that year. So while when baby was waking up screaming in the middle of the night, and I'd wake up from the screaming, and I couldn't go back to sleep, I'd sit and read about crypto
And then check the charts.
while mom was feeding him. So yeah, it was quite nuts.
Yeah, man. I totally can imagine how steep that learning curve must have been for you, right? When everything is moving so quickly, you have the FOMO and you want to just learn everything.
Yeah, I got wrecked a few times. Fortunately, I haven't been. Actually, no. Even in then, I made mistakes. I got scammed. Went into one or two rugs, and then at some point it kicked in. I mean, I worked in risk management, and it's just like, you are good at identifying risk. Like, what are you doing? So I changed my approach to doing things, and I then took a more. But it was also in the beginning, like, I wasn't too hard on myself, because I mean, even if I read the doc, so I go and I read something in the Discord, like, what did I really know? Right? I might think I may have known something, but I didn't. Like, when you're that early in the stage, like, you really don't know that much. But then I spent more time going through docs, reading through docs, trying to understand what the docs are asking. Then still, instead of then asking my group of friends questions, I started asking in the channels, and I push for answers to understand. And I can be quite pedantic when something feels off, and I think that is a almost a skill set I learned from, or a natural intuition that developed from working all those years in risk. Because my background is like 10 years in auditing and like 4 years in risk management. So there is like an almost intuition when something doesn't feel right. And then I just pick and pull at the thread. And then since then, like, the amount of times I lost money through scams and rugs and things like that went down exponentially. Like, it barely stopped happening, and I only then lost money because, not a good trader.
Yeah. And yeah, after that, so you joined in May. Then when did you join Beethoven, in fact? Like, was that your first kind of full-time job in crypto?
Yeah, my first pay job. I did some help with a project, a kind of one of those where you kind of help out for free as you learn the ropes. It is a project called Statera, and it was launched. When did it launch? I think it launched in like June. So it like is one of those projects that launched during the peak DeFi summer, and so I spent some time working there. Then I don't know if you remember, there was a project that launched. Actually, I don't remember when it launched, but there was a rebasing token called XBTC that launched, and it was pretty much pegged to Bitcoin's dominance. And I actually got to know the team that was working on that while I was working on Statera, and I actually contributed to sections of that white paper. And that's when, like, I really first got a sense of really contributing to the space. And then, then I just took, I went through a period where I wasn't really helping anyone out. And then I got interested in, Phantom because of Andre. Purely because what attracted me to Andre in the first place was, like, I have like deep South African roots, and Andre is South African, and like, back home there's a saying, proudly South African, and I really feel that. Excuse me. And so to see him doing what he was doing at that stage, like, I was filled with immense pride. It was just like, wow, this guy's amazing. And yeah, he mentioned Phantom, and I was straight in. And then I was playing around on Phantom. Then I heard about Beethoven, and I got into the Discord. I actually left the Beethoven for a few weeks before I jumped into the Discord, and got to hang around. I knew a bit about, because I was familiar with Balancer. I was able to talk and contribute in the Discord server. I think Beethoven launched in October, and then it was around back end of mid-November. I was asked to join what is now the music directors music directors. Back then, it was the old liquidity committee, and that was just because I was able to show that I understood a thing or two about how the multi-token pools work, and and then I officially started in back end of Jan, beginning of Feb. What is that? It is 2022. And yeah, went on. And I, I mean, the story from when I was at Beethoven, the things we were working on, and did some really cool things while I was there, and worked with some really cool people.
Yeah. So, I mean, in fact, I only got to kind of see analytics for protocols because of you, right, when you were in Beethoven. But before we get into that, what made you really take that step to quit the TradFi job and jump full-time to crypto?
It was very much a combination of things, but one of the biggest things was, how do I say this? The lifestyle just wasn't working for me anymore. And when I say lifestyle, in terms of the commitment to work, like before I had a kid, and we were living in London, I was working 10 hours plus a day. I wasn't working weekends, but 10 hours plus a day.
Wow.
And while I was working in a very bespoke risk department within like a massive investment bank. So like there was just a ton going on. And then COVID happened, and COVID actually meant work went up because there was just insane volatility in the market, and more volatility means more risk, which meant more work for my team and I. And then all of a sudden, although I was working remotely, working stretched from 10 to 11, 12 hours a day. And that was initially, but then it did calm down. But what I realized was, and what was quite helpful was, I mean, like most major cities, if you're living in the city, your place isn't that big, right? To the apartment that you live in. And I'd be sitting at the dining room table working, and I'd look to my right, and my wife's there with the little one that's just been born, and it's just, they're there, but I'm sitting here, and then my son would then crawl. When he started crawling, he'd crawl over to me, or he'd come work, and he'd want my attention, but I'd be on a call, or I'd be doing like something, because everything is always urgent. And it's just like, this can't be it. Like I cannot be like, yes, I had a fantastic job, but and I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. Like we don't live so that we can work. We work so that we can live. And it's just like this, the dynamic just didn't work for me anymore. When I didn't have kids, it was fine. But now I had a kid. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have the flexibility that, I can go pick him up from school. Well, now he has a brother too, so I can go pick my kids up from school. I can take an hour in the middle of the afternoon and just hang out with them if they want to come play. I think, when anyone that has young kids knows that, it's only a limited amount of time that they actually seek your attention like that. And if you close that door early, it has knock-on impacts that personally I didn't want. It's not like I'm not saying this is the correct way to do it, or there is no right or wrong way. It's just not the way I wanted to do it. And so that was, I wanted the flexibility Sorry, that's a very long way to say I wanted the flexibility to spend more time with my family.
No worries,
So,
man.
but even like in crypto, I work weekends now, but I
Yep.
don't work that in that 8 hour block during the day, which, and having that flexibility during the weekdays is just it's, for me, it's worth its weight in gold. And that was probably the biggest driver why I went full time into the space, because I knew that I had a feeling that we are going to exit COVID, and we were, they would do like a return to office, that they'd gradually get people back in the office. I mean, once COVID was going to end, they were going to start transitioning everyone back to the office, because all these companies, they're paying rent for all these premises. So if and and if you actually look holistically, if you want to treat it purely as a business from a numbers perspective, if you're going to allow someone to work remotely from home, why are you allowing that person to be in London, which is a high cost location, when you could actually just outsource that work to hubs in either India or Thailand or Budapest? You have these low cost location hubs that are popping up in traditional finance, where the work is outsourced and there's maybe one or two people that work in the center, like London and New York, but most of the team is based in an offshore location because it's far cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So, it, like, financially, it was just like, well, there's no ways they're going to let everyone just work from home while they're carrying this rent cost. They're either going to tell you to come in, or they're going to replace you with a cheaper option, so that they can manage cost containment. And around the time when I left, they already started talking about they wanted to transition back. They wanted everyone to be in the office at least 4 days a week, and that meant I would generally be in the office from between 7 and 8 until 6, which means I basically wouldn't see my kids in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I get home, they'd be getting ready for bed. Um, so yeah, I didn't want that. And I mean, I I was an SME within the firm, but I wasn't that special to get that kind of preferential treatment, and I didn't expect it either. Like, I didn't even ask for it. Like, I knew it was off the table. My ego's not that big to think like these guys must give it to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, that was it. So it was just one of those. And then once I had the flexibility of not being office bound, then we ended up leaving London, and I was able to work wherever. So yeah, things kind of worked out. It was been really cool.
Nice. Nice. And actually, I want to move on to the next topic of so you were the one that kind of started the whole financial reporting and dashboards thing for protocols, right? How did that come about?
Well, it was more. There was a good reception at Beethoven within the community in terms of these kinds of reports. And I mean, it didn't start with the monthly. Like, it first started with that almost weekly newsletter, Symphony of the Week, where we used to profile a pool's performance over the course of the week. And that evolved into the monthly, and then that evolved into quarterly. And like, I guess I'm going to put in quotation marks, the pinnacle was the annual report, which which was quite big. And if you look around at that stage, like, no one was really doing it. I think when I first started, the only protocol that I actually saw release a report was Alchemex. They were doing quarterly reports, and then Yearn would do, but they'd be a bit flaky in a sense that some months they do it, some quarters they do it, others they wouldn't. But the reception in the town halls on social media, it seemed like there was an appetite to understand some of these numbers, and it was, I think, also people just appreciated that, Beethoven's basically a business, and we're giving users full insight into everything. Because look, I didn't. If you go look back, and I was quite clear that if we're going to go down the path, that there'd be consistency, in a sense that, so we'll always talk about TVL. Whether TVL is good or bad, we'd always talk about it. But within, I'd spend more time putting per month's performance of TVL or volume or whatever into context and giving it, and that's where more traction came actually from, because then people started to, I think, I'm guessing here, but I think people then started to learn from, okay, volume went down, but that's not necessarily bad because of whatever these factors are. And then, so we thought, okay, well, so there was good reception from the Beethoven community. Let's try to see what that reception is elsewhere. And we've been working to sort of grow that business within Revelo, trying to find the correct market fit. It is a lot has happened in the industry since I first published that first monthly report at Beethoven. In the time that all of this happened, this was before Luna was still around. So, the market's evolved, and it's now about trying to find, that fit, like, which section of the industry is still interested in that information, and how do we need to present it so that people still find it useful. Because a lot of participants in the industry now, they want useful information that they can act on. They might not want that sort of educational piece of understanding things. They want something that they can use directly or indirectly to execute a trade. And that's why you'll see that the snapshots we do now, they have I call it vanilla commentary, because it's like the standard, just talking about, the volume, fees, TVL, or whatever moved by this. This is how it's trending against competitors, and then it's got a section that specifically puts that change into context, so you could see how are they performing against their competitors. That if you were playing in that sector or in that space, is there a potential trade to do something based on other information that is available within Revelo. So if you take curve, for example, does the information coming from this curve snapshot supplement your trade idea that you got from reading some of the notes on curve, or something that you saw in the breakdown on curve? And then you start pulling the pieces together, because that is ultimately the power of what we want Revelo to be, is this hub where you go and there's a whole bunch of information there that as you work through it, you can develop your own trade thesis, because you have the financial and the non-financial data together with summaries of the mouthpieces of the respective protocols.
Awesome. And I really enjoyed like reading your reports, right, and your financial analysis. And I want to ask you a question. What do you think of the current metrics that we use to assess token prices? Like in traditional markets, right? We look at value stocks, you do your PE ratios, you do like what book value, price to book value, right? And then for what growth stocks, you look at the revenue growth and things like that. So what do you think about the current financial metrics that we are using to kind of assess whether a token is like kind of fairly priced or like over undervalued? What's your take on it?
I think it's difficult, and I think there are parts that we try and force, quote unquote, force traditional finance concepts into DeFi. And I say that because, when you do your PE ratios and things like that, in TradFi, you don't have a mechanism, right, where a company gives the equivalent of shares away for free continuously. That doesn't exist. And if we look at our ratios, if you speak to a lot of participants in the industry, they look at it, well, the smart contract generates these tokens and they cost nothing. So it's, protocols view it as free money the same way that those that farm and dump do. And I don't think you can ever appropriately value a token if that is your view on it, right? You need to be quite deliberate in terms of how you issue tokens and how those rewards flow. And what is the cost, right? Is what you're doing sustainable? If you are, I know that now the market has changed, that, we see mission schedules evolving. But if we think about a year and a half ago, all emission schedules were very similar. Aggressive upfront, that sort of tails down to either permanently reduce by X% or to hit a hard cap. And it was those two endpoints, but it was very aggressive upfront, and it was then slicing down. And long term, that's not sustainable, because you're not going to be able to pay for that revenue generation in perpetuity, because TVL's just going to leave. So I think, introduction of things like O tokens does help. I think the introduction of things like Redder Query, where you can design things around curves that are not, they can be quite flexible. And I mean flexible in the sense that you have a variety of opportunities. And for example, on Beethoven, right, MarBeats has a specific maturity curve that it follows. Every pool on Beethoven can have its own maturity curve. And I think that is kind of a step forward in that process. I'm not saying it should have its own maturity curve, but it can, right? And then it's up to someone to then figure out how to maximize that. Now, whether it's derivatives or lending market or DEX, the tools available need to evolve so that we get to better end products when it comes to how we allocate tokens. I think once we solve for token allocation and how tokens are given, then you can only solve for how to value these tokens. As long as we have these aggressive emissions, you'll never be able to value tokens in the same way you do in traditional finance. I guess the other side of the coin is then just don't value them like traditional finance, and just have this, keep it like a Ponzi, basically. But that definitely limits wider participation.
Yeah, right. So I have the thought that maybe, since you mentioned we can't apply the same metrics over, do you think maybe we could have someone who come up with some other metric that works in future? Maybe like Souvlaki yourself, right? You, in maybe 2 months from now, you're like, hey, this metric works to value token, then kind of everyone just follows that metrics, and then it kind of works. Do you see that happening, or what's your take on it?
I think it could happen. I think the challenge with it is to get adoption. right? Because the only way you get adoption for something like that is you'd need protocols to buy in on it. Now, a proper, quote unquote, proper, because I'm using that term loosely here, valuation model for tokens currently in circulation, you're probably going to have 95% come out far worse. And you'll find that even no matter what they are, many of them will be overvalued. And 95% gut feel, 90 to 95% will be overvalued, which then makes adoption harder. Because if protocols, I mean, if you think of, take TVL, right? TVL is total value locked. If you told someone TVL stands for total value locked, the first thing they think about is that my tokens are locked in the smart contract. Or it's not. It's just deposited, or it's total value staked. Right?
Yep.
It's not locked. But protocols jumped on that acronym and they started speaking about it, and now it's adopted across the industry. I don't think it's mature enough to adopt like a standard valuation model in the next 2 months is also, unless you could see platforms come up with their models and you could see that, take research platform 1, research platform 2, research platform 3, they might have their own version of how to value a protocol, but to get industry-wide adoption, you need protocol buy-in, and I don't know how long that will take, and I'm not sure how to get that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a good point there, the TVL. Like, TVL can literally vanish overnight, right? Because it's not actually locked. If everyone were to pull the liquidity, it can technically halve overnight, right? And then it's not locked, like you mentioned. So people like to use like TVL market cap as a kind of metric in a sense. I'm quoting, right? So yeah, I just kind of feel that, like what you mentioned, it's a bit immature at this point, right? We don't have the correct metrics to kind of value the tokens in a way. So everyone's just kind of what's the word? Like in local we call it like agaration, that's just an estimation kind of thing. It's like
Yeah,
around there, comparing with protocol A and B, they're doing the same thing. It's around there, so yeah, it's fine. Like something like that, right?
agreed. But I think they can, I mean, using plain TBL, yeah, but you start taking that metric a bit more seriously if you use the 60-day average of TBL, because then you start smoothing out spikes and you can get a true reflection of longevity. But 60 days is a long time in this space. But I mean, one of the other problems that we have just generally in this industry is, the people that are floating TBL to market cap or revenue to market cap and these kind of ratios are often trying to do it that, hey, this protocol is undervalued, and they often have a vested interest in that protocol, which creates a bit of a, like, it doesn't create a bit of it, it is a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, so you do need to take it with a bit of salt when you see it. And even like with the reports that we do, like, and it's for that we disclose in the reports whenever there's like a commercial relationship, as in, has this snapshot been paid for, or is it just us trying to think that this would be useful? And you need to keep that in mind when you're absorbing information, right? And so taking that, so two things really: taking those mechanisms for valuation. So if we're looking at TBL, expanded average over 60 days, so you eliminate like a massive spike or massive dip for whatever reason, and also paying close attention to where the information is coming from, who is saying it, and what potential outcomes do they have? I mean, it's been a few times this year that we've seen quite a few stories on Twitter about, people with large accounts pushing protocols on certain metrics or certain events, and they're getting paid for it without saying, right? And that's a very important part for the valuation process to mature, right? If you want a standard industry valuation, it kind of needs to be like thought with an independent mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Nice. Super nice to have this discussion with you, right? Like, I'm not sure if you're having fun. I'm enjoying listening to you talk about this. Anyway, my next question would be then, what else do you do when you analyze protocols, right? Before clicking that buy button? Yeah, obviously use all this data and all analytics kind of things. What else do you look at?
I spend So it depends. So if I'm looking at something to medium to long term, I read the docs and I look for potential red flags in the docs, and that then makes the decision whether I pull well, that's a big part of the decision whether I pull the trigger or not. I do spend some. I'll then ask questions, whether it's either online or in Discord or Telegram, to kind of suss out what the response is to questions that I may have on the protocol. If it's like aggressive or defensive, probably not going to take the conversation much further. Because that's just internal sort of, I guess, checks that I do. But I do often get a very good, that intuition I was speaking about. I generally get my best sense when I'm reading the docs and when I'm reading through some of the announcements. If it's something for the shorter term, I do still read the docs, but then I'm trying to suss out for different things. If the trade is short term, I'm just trying to see whether is it a scam. What are the likelihoods of they're going to get rugged? Are they going to rug me, or is something going to go? Is something massively going to blow up? Yes, I look for different risk factors, but I always tend to get and you can feel like the doc should be the most important part of a protocol, right? Because that is your always available data source on what problem you're trying to solve, how you work, how values accrues, and who benefits from that value. And what you often find is you go look at a newly launched protocol or a relatively new protocol, and you hop into their docs, and you see the docs is split out into two main sections. Section 1 is basically how to bridge to the network they're on, how to connect your wallet to the website. If I see that, I'm probably not going to invest in the protocol in any case. Because if half your docs is around how to connect and how to buy, you're not giving end users information that you're here to just go through a pump cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part is looking like, well, what does it actually do? I think, and they are surprisingly, prominent protocols that are actually very lacking in the docs. And yeah, you go and you're like, this is surprising. This is remarkably bad. Like, why isn't this?
I'm gonna
But yeah,
ask,
so
are you gonna name it? Are you gonna name one such protocol?
let me, while we're on the call, let me just make sure that it still is like that, because I'm not going to name and shame if they perhaps they fixed it, but I don't think they have. But let's see.
Yeah, sure.
So, for example, I think that there has been some enhancements, so I'll give them that. But yeah, the spooky swap docs aren't that great.
Ah,
Spirit was the same, and to be honest, for a long time, neither was Beethoven's. And I know that Jedi and Nally spent a lot of time renovating that and making those docks what they are today. And those docks are really, really awesome. And I can say that because like I barely contributed to that, so it's not like I'm blowing my own trumpet here. Uh, but if I remember, I don't know if you remember, there was a protocol on Polygon called Titan. That's the one where Mark Cuban lost all his money and then started crying for regulation.
I might
Their
have some.
docs,
Yeah.
their docs were horrendous. I remember loads of people asked me about it, and they said, "Oh, they're going to get into it. This thing's printing, like the APRs are crazy." I got halfway to the docs. I said, "Not for me." Um, they were just poor, but it's easy to say that in hindsight, right? Hindsight is always beautiful, but I never went into it because I never touched it because after I read the docs and I was just like, this isn't for me. But they are. I remember, who else is it? There's one or two. So as you know, Danny is back from Abra. He's back. He's vocal on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I checked in when he first came back about WAGMI. I checked the docs. Go have a look at the docs and tell me whether you think those docs are good or not. He's talking about doing like online walkthroughs. Like a month ago, they were very poor. Hopefully, they've enhanced them now. But again, just keep in mind, if half the docs is about how to connect your wallet, how to bridge, how to trade, right? That's fine. That's a walkthrough, but that's not your documentation explaining what your protocol's about and how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. It's more of like they want to get your money, right? They're teaching you how to deposit your money into their pockets.
Exactly.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So the landing page is bad, but the docs are much better than what they were when I checked in a month ago. So fair play to them.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I haven't checked in on them in a bit. I saw they did some announcement, I think, earlier today. But yeah. Anyway, my next question in, let me think, in like 1 or 2 minutes or less, let's hear your take on the market outlook, right? Do you think it's going to be up or down in the next 6 months to a year, and why?
I think it will go down, just because of the external factors. Like there's too much pain for everyday folk. Like inflation's out of control, debt is out of control. Like people's lives are starting to be impacted in a negative manner. And so if there is some sort of boost to the economy, I don't see it rushing to the industry. I think people will be just using that to survive. So that's the first point. And the second point is, I don't really think there's been many new exciting things come out to stimulate growth, where there's a lot of things in the space that could pull it further down. Like we talk about, if there's a win on the rec side, yes, positive for the market, but do we think that Binance ends up winning its case against the SEC and the CTFC? What Coinbase is doing quite well in their lawsuits. So fair play to them, and that could be a catalyst, right? One thing like that could be a massive catalyst. But there's also, I think if you look at the regulations that are being proposed out in the US, I think DeFi of the future isn't going to be the DeFi that we've experienced the DeFi we want. I hope like regulation is going to put DeFi to fit into the TradFi boxes, and you can see it already in the draft bill. You can see it in Europe as well. Right? If you and what I mean by that is, if you look at the EU's bill on crypto, Mika, they defined like what crypto assets are and what a crypto asset service provider is, and you then need to go through all of those things. And inside the legislation, they say that protocols that are sufficiently decentralized do not need to meet these requirements. So you're great. That's promising for DeFi, but what is sufficiently decentralized? They haven't defined that, and the reason why I'm cautious about it is if you think about when you try and do anything with traditional finance, right? If you have more than 10% stakeholding in a company, you are key personnel. You are a key stakeholder, and you need to be. There are certain disclosures that come with it. So if you then scale it out and you think about like DeFi itself, how much of token ownership is concentrated within a certain handful, right? You think of, and does regulation see the team as individuals holding the tokens, or do they see the team as one collective? And if the team is viewed as one collective, which probably should, because they are basically management of an enterprise, right? Their token holdings collectively, that's probably above 20% for most protocols. Does that mean? That probably means they might not be sufficiently decentralized. I'm speculating here, but they have openly said that the barrier to meet the requirements of being sufficiently decentralized will be quite high. So I think it's going to be a very difficult phase before we find that right balance. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but I don't think it's going to be what the current iteration is. And I think that immediate change will be viewed initially as a step down and therefore be bad for the industry.
Nice. I mean, that was way longer than the 2 minutes that I gave you, but that was
I'm
a really
sorry.
good answer. No, I'm just
I'm
kidding.
so
I'm just
sorry.
kidding. It was a really good answer, man. Nice. But yeah, I mean, we normally we take a look at token allocations, right? Like teams are usually about 20%, right? Sometimes more, sometimes less, but around there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you need to carve out. So teams, is it individual or together? Private sale, public sale, like what were those allocations? And this whole bunch. So it can, you know, those distributions can become quite a challenge. And imagine, like, so we think about, you know, sufficiently decentralized in a sense that, okay, well, it's decentralized in the sense that the protocol is permissionless, that's immutable, and it is what it is. They can't do anything. People just sort of manage and market it, basically. But regulators don't only look. That's one of the things they look at. They'll look at everything the same way they look at everything when you try and do an exchange listing, right? They will give, I think, especially in the US, they will give protocols like the rubber glove treatment. And, those that can meet the threshold, and good for them. Like, they are going to be the winners.
Nice. I mean, I'm no expert in this, but it's been a real pleasure hearing you speak about all this, right? Um, and then think we're about done with all the serious talk now, right? The crypto, the data and analytics kind of thing. Can we move on to get to know a bit more about yourself, Souvlaki, who you are, like what's your day in the life of Souvlaki? Like what do you do? Do you wake up still at 7 a.m. to do work? I don't know. Let's hear it from you.
I'm actually quite boring.
That's what everyone
um,
says.
yeah, I mean, so most days I wake up 6:15, half past 6. Uh, make the kids lunch, take them to school, um, get home, log on, see what's happening out there, whether it's in Discord, X app, and then dive into work. Start whatever I'm working on at that stage. Then I generally break halfway through the day to go pick up one of my kids at school. Come back, I'll work a bit more, and then I'll spend time with the kids again. And then, yeah, then in the evenings, I just spend it with the family, whether we go visit other family members or just stay at home. And then I put at least most nights, I put at least one of my kids to bed every night. Either, and that can really take anywhere between 15 minutes to an hour and a half. It really is luck of the draw. And then, yeah, like the rest of the night really depends on that. Other if I lost unexpected time during the day, then I'll log on and I'll work again after the kids have gone to sleep, and that could be like from 9 o'clock onwards, or I'll chill out and I'll watch football. Like I'm a massive. Like, I love sport.
Right.
I love sport, so I watch football, as in like soccer in the States. So I love watching football, and I love watching rugby union and cricket. So if there is, so it's the Rugby World Cup on at the moment, so that's quite nice. That watch a few games. I find watching sport as a break and a relief, and I really do enjoy it. And occasionally I go down to the pub with Nick to watch the games, but he's a Man U
Nice.
fan, and they're quite crappy at the moment, so he doesn't come as much anymore. But no, it's yeah. So that is where I is watching sport, but the rest of it is basically balancing. Trying to be successful in a space that is quite competitive. Because people don't think about it, but crypto is a very a competitive space. There's a lot of bright minds out here, a lot of dedicated minds that are out here,
Like yourself.
and thank you. And spending time with the family and the kids, and trying to be, hopefully the best possible father that I can be.
Nice. Really awesome, man. And what's next for you then? Some of your short-term or long-term goals for yourself. Do you have any plans?
Well, I want to broaden my horizons a bit, try and get involved a bit more in in some other projects, and see what's out there. Try and continue to learn and contribute in the space, which won't necessarily be with Revelo. I'm open to just venturing independently, and seeing what I can do. And before Nick knows this too. I've had the discussion with him, um, but yeah, just try and make my mark, and try and find a way to you know contributing in a space, but being able to still afford to live,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense that if I could just stay in here all the time, but at the end of the day, like, need to pay the bills, and hopefully grow with the ecosystem, and just keep learning, keep engaging, keep meeting new people. There's so many smart people to talk about. And I think one thing I'd like to learn more about is like broadening my horizons and talking to more people that and expanding my crypto network.
Nice. I mean, I like how you kind of halfway through the thing, you're like, I spoke to Nick about this, right? You gotta make sure to say that Nick, I asked my boss
Yeah,
permission first.
no, it's just, I mean, it makes it sound like, well, imagine like this recording goes out and like this guy says he works at Revelo Intel, but yeah, he's talking about working independently and doing all these other things. So no, and I mean that's one of the best things with working and collaborating or joining up with Nick is I I know him outside of work. Like we are friends outside of work, and so like my kids love him. So that's what I mean by friends. It's not just someone I go and meet up with from time. Like him and his wife come over. Like my kids love him, whatever. So we do have a close relationship outside of crypto. And therefore we can have like these open and honest discussions. And I guess that's how we challenge each other because, if you listen to when Nick and I talk, we don't always agree. And that's a good thing. Or at least I think it is.
Oh, that's really nice, man. And yeah, so you kind of mentioned also that you want to kind of go independently to explore more, like any specific roles or directions that you're looking at the moment that you can share.
Not really. Like I'm willing to contribute wherever. Like I think like my baseline skill, like what I'm really good at, is risk. But like the industry hasn't evolved to that area yet. So the thing that I'm next best at is like analyzing and writing reports, whether they financial or non-financial ones. Like the cool one we did for liquidity, and just see maybe there's someone out there that wants to talk about things, that wants a particular project looked after, that wants anything really. Like crypto is really a blank space, and I have like I have a lot of knowledge and experience around treasury, risk management, financial reporting, and I can do. Um, I don't. I don't discriminate when it comes to like learning new things and working with new people.
Awesome, awesome. Nice. I mean, wish you all the best in that. And it's been a real pleasure hearing you speak. I think it's almost time for us to wrap things up. So, as usual, I'd like to pose off two final questions, with the first one being, could you share your greatest takeaway from being in crypto?
I would think it is that a large part of the modern day working force is a bit broken, and we spoke about it earlier in a sense that you know um, we've lost that balance between companies extracting maximum value out of the employees and employees extracting maximum value of the employers. And I think in crypto there's a much better balance between the two, and I think there's a lot that traditional, not necessarily traditional workspaces can take from it.
Awesome. Nice. And then my final question to you would be then, could you give me three guest nominations to come and let loose with Moose in future?
So number one would be Nick. I think number two is Zero to Tom. I always think he has some nice things to say. And number three would be Rectamides. I don't know if he's been on here. I've
You
lost track of
can't.
all you.
Yeah, you can't mention Radio Milis cause
So shows you that I've lost track of all your episodes, and I actually haven't seen him. You're gonna have to cut that out. No, I think who else? Who is a good one? I think Corval.
ooh, okay. I haven't spoken to him much. I had some interactions with him before for LearnFi, but not much afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think he has such a so Corval's intelligent, and he has such a soothing tone when he speaks. Like it just flows into your mind. It's awesome listening to him.
Nice. So nice. So it's Mr. Dracon himself. Zero to Tom. Actually, he's been nominated as well. I think twice or thrice already. So it's about time to get him on. He doesn't want to reply me in the DMs, dude.
Spam him.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we spoke a bit before, like that guy. But yeah, he doesn't seem to be very responsive. Or want to come on. But we'll try again. We can tag him again, and then you can try and help me convince him as well.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we'll wrap up here now. Thanks, Souvlaki. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a real pleasure hearing you share about all your insights. And of course, to the listeners as well for tuning in to this episode. We will see you in the next episode. That brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Before you go, do remember to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you never miss a thing. Comment down below what you liked about this episode, who you would like me to interview next, or any topics that you want to learn more about. Until next time, this is Moose moving out.